all U.S. troops out of Syria. The president said, we've achieved victory over the Islamic State. Time to bring 2,000 of our soldiers, service members, back from Syria. Joining me on the phone right now is Congressman Tom Garrett from Virginia's 5th Congressional District. And I understand, Congressman, it's good to have you back on the show, by the way. And I understand you just came back from Syria, and you've got a little bit of a reaction to the news from the White House.
Well, I mean, without overstating it, I'm beside myself. I went to Syria over Thanksgiving on my own time, on my own money. What would you say if I told you that in the Middle East right now, there was an emerging group of people comprised of a multi-ethnic coalition of both Muslims and Christians, Kurds, Arabs, Syrians, who were working towards a constitutional democratic form of government that was tolerant, that allowed people to live and worship as they chose without fear for their lives? Because that exists. What would you say if I told you that they were the same people who were our most reliable allies in the fight against ISIS? And what would you say if I told you we were about to abandon them? Now, President Trump is right. We smoked ISIS on the battlefield.
Yep. But
that's like a patient with 4 cancers. You cut one out, leave 3, and say, we're done here.
I think I'd guess you're talking about the Kurds, right?
Well, largely the Syrian Democratic Council was an idea started by the Kurds, but to call it the Kurds is to play into the hands of Erdogan's Turkey because, I met with the civil councils in Darfur, which is a largely Arab region, and the civil council was Arab. I met with the civil council outside or in Manbij, which was largely Arab and to a much lesser degree Kurdish. I met with the civil council in Jazeera province, which was Christian and Kurdish, right? So this is a government, a self-administration, if you will, a sub-entity of a broken Syria where the government is women and men that look like the people in the communities. Now, Erdogan wants to tell you it's all Kurds, because that's convenient because of the history of the Turks with the PKK.
Yep.
This is not a Kurdish experiment, it's a human experiment. And the Christian military commanders, who I could put on your show, were losing soldiers fighting ISIS with the Syrian Democratic Councils, that's Kurds, Arabs, and Christians, in Darfur, where there really is no Christian population. So there's been the Turks spend, we believe, $10 million a month influencing American opinion. I'm livid that Flynn was apparently in their pockets, and I'm not an anti-Trump guy. And this story needs to be told because we've abandoned in Cambodia, we've abandoned in Iraqi Kurdistan, we've abandoned all around the world. And this speaks to who the world thinks we are and who we really are.
Well, Congressman, I told people when Donald Trump was elected, I was thrilled. I was thrilled to support him and endorse him and vote for him and encourage other people to vote for him. But I also told them that I would say when I disagreed with the man. And this action, I just flat don't understand it. And I don't understand what's driving it out of the White House. I can't believe it's the generals who are saying it's the time, just although there may be some of them who are doing that. So do you have an inkling as to why did the White House decide to do this and this dramatically and announce it to the whole world? Because Donald Trump's also been a guy who said, you don't tell the bad guys what you're planning to do. You just do it. And I agreed with him there.
Let me just break it down in a manner that my colleagues probably wouldn't. I'm on your show because I can't get 5 minutes of the president's time. It's as simple as that. I think he is doing what he thinks is right because he's taking counsel from people who say, well, we have to worry about the macro, and the macro is Iran and Turkey. Well, look, we're emboldening the Iranians. We're emboldening our not friends, the Turks under Erdogan. But he's taking bad counsel. I don't think he's wrong. I just don't think he's fully informed. And we've been, I'm doing every media hit I can do because this is, when the Continental Congress met the first time, exactly no foreign governments recognized their legitimacy, right?
Yep.
And so, again, I will not call this a Kurdish movement, even though the Kurds led it, because to do that plays into Erdogan's hand. We've declared the PKK, a Kurdish separatist group, to be terrorists. I get all that. Unlike the Turks, I'm not going to lie to you. That's real. But let's differentiate between what goes on in Syria and what goes on in Turkey.
Well, and Congressman,
that's what Erdogan won't do.
Congressman, I think your explanation is a solid one, because when there have been decisions made by the president that to some of us seem a little puzzling, you wonder who's he listening to. And you realize that as much as we view the president as this extraordinarily important office, you have to realize it's a man in that office, and he has to have people. He has people around him who may give him good advice, or they may give him advice based on what's good for the particular cause they represent. And I think that Trump Trump has made some good decisions, very good decisions, and some very bad decisions over the last 2 years because, as you say, he's surrounded by people, and to some extent, I blame some establishment Republicans, not in this case necessarily, although it may be in this case, for having said, oh, you have to do this or you have to do that. And then occasionally you see decisions that appear to be entirely Trump, like the Paris Accord, which a lot of people thought he was going to follow his daughter's lead. No, he stuck to his guns and said, we got to get out of this. Smart decision. This one I feel very uncomfortable about because it sounds like we're going to replay a lot of recent history of the last 20 or 30 years where we pull out too early and bad things happen and then we're right back into it.
We look, again, I mean, if the president says we defeated ISIS on the battlefield, I'll largely agree, although I was in Darzur province 2 weeks ago while we were literally still being shot at by ISIS. But by the way, I wore the uniform. I deployed, okay? So I'm not a chicken hawk here. I'm not advocating we attack anybody. I'm just advocating that we stay there. We demand that the Iranians, the Turks, the Russians, and the regime allow the northeastern Syrian folks who aspire towards democracy a seat at the table because they're not even included in negotiations. Their sons and daughters have died for the chance to just live unmolested. And that we tell the Turks who bombed Iraq, not Syria, but bombed Sinjar of all places in Iraq last week, and it didn't even make a blip on the radar screen, that they need to not fly in Turkey or I'm sorry, in Syria and Iraq. And so I'm not advocating for U.S. action. I'm actually advocating for us to just stay there and protect the people who share our values and focus on human beings on the ground. And I think if we do our foreign policy based on, our values, that if we do the micro, the macro will follow. And the world will understand that the United States does business with people who don't kill their citizens.
Yeah. Well, so Congressman Garrett, those he's taking counsel from, what do you think their ultimate goal is? To say, you got to pull these 2,000 troops home. Who is that good for?
So it's a quick political win. Look, he got us out of this. This is what President Obama did when he pulled us, precipitously out of Iraq, yep. Right? And that, along with us encouraging an Arab Spring that we didn't fully understand the ramifications of, led to ISIS. There's no argument, and so there's no legitimate argument. And so they're saying, hey, you can get a political win by bringing these troops home, announce it before Christmas. I get it, but this is a political hit that'll be a blip on the radar screen. Meanwhile, I've had dinner and lunch and talked with people who are, and this is not hyperbole, who are going to die because they've risked everything for an experiment in self-determination, democracy, and tolerance that is inherently American, right? I mean, everybody's going to die. The question is how we're going to live, which is why I spent my time and money going over there, because, people like Lafayette and Koskiewski and Pulaski and von Steuben, no foreign government helped us at first. It was people who helped us. These are human beings. The difference between Lars Larson and a mother and Kamishli is a miracle of fate. So we should care. And again, this isn't about wanting to go to war. It's about Erdogan's been very clear. They're going into Minbij. They'll be in within the next few weeks. If I could bet on it, I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't want blood on my hands, but it's going to happen, and innocent men, women, and children will die. Let me give you a fact.
Yeah.
The high point for Christians in Iraq and Syria, just Christians, and I care about all people, was about 3 million in population this century. Right now, we're down to 400,000. We have watched genocide. We have watched ethnic cleansing. When the Turks went into Afrin in Syria, not Turkey, and Jarablus and El Bab, they changed the names of the streets to honor Turkish leaders. They fly as we speak the Turkish flag over the schools and the hospitals and the city halls. They changed the curriculum for the students to Turkish. Turkey's not fighting ISIS. Turkey's reconstructing the Ottoman Empire. And these people in northeastern Syria, I disagree with them on lots of their precepts. They got a largely socialist sort of background. But I'll take socialists who believe in democracy over radical Islam and Ottoman fascism any day.
I couldn't agree with you more. Congressman, thank you for your service in uniform, and thanks for taking some time with me tonight. I hope you get a lot of attention to this cause, and I hope maybe we can get the president to reverse this.
We'll take all the help we can get. God bless you.
It is my pleasure. Congressman Tom Garrett, who represents the 5th Congressional District in the Commonwealth of Virginia, will be back in just a moment. You're listening to the Lars Larson Show. Get local news.